A hero's most defining moment is often not their final victory. We are about to explore 23 forgotten transformations that completely redefine legendary figures. These are not simple power-ups but deep, symbolic shifts that reveal the true cost of heroism. You will gain a completely new understanding of what makes these ancient characters so compelling. We will uncover why a king was turned into a wolf for his arrogance and how a grieving queen became a weeping stone. This journey will show you the hidden layers of myth, where a change in form was a change in destiny itself. What does it mean for a person's very essence to be rewritten by a single, profound change? A tranquil forest pool holds a secret that would rewrite a man's destiny. The prophet Tiresias, walking through the quiet woods, came upon a sight that would define his life: two majestic serpents intertwined. In a moment of profound disturbance, he struck them apart. This single act, a violation of a sacred moment, summoned a punishment from the goddess Hera that was as strange as it was transformative. He was changed not into a monster, but into a woman. For 7 full years, Tiresias lived this new life, experiencing the world through an entirely different lens. This was no simple curse. It was a deep, psychological immersion into another state of being. As the Roman poet Ovid later captured, he had known both sides of life. This unique perspective is what forged his legendary wisdom, making him a seer unlike any other. His transformation granted him an authority that no single-gendered experience could provide. This became critically important during a famous debate on Mount Olympus. Zeus and Hera argued fiercely over which gender experienced more pleasure in love. They turned to Tiresias, the only person who could possibly know the answer. His reply that women experienced far more so enraged Hera that she struck him blind, while Zeus granted him the gift of prophecy in compensation. His physical sight was lost, but his inner vision was expanded eternally. His eventual return to a male form did not erase those 7 years. Instead, that dual existence became the core of his identity, an integrated wisdom that made him both powerful and tragic. How does living another's truth fundamentally reshape a person's soul? Tiresias shows us that the most powerful transformations are those that force us to see the world through another's eyes, making his forgotten change a profound lesson in empathy itself. The halls of King Lycaon echoed with a different kind of arrogance. Where Tiresias encountered a sacred mystery, Lycaon engineered a monstrous test. He did not believe his divine guest was truly Zeus, and so he devised a horrific proof. In a profound violation of the sacred bond of Xenia, the law of hospitality that was the bedrock of ancient society, the king ordered the murder of a hostage. He then had the child's flesh cooked and served to the king of the gods at his own table. This was not merely an insult. It was a deliberate act of sacrilege, a challenge flung at the divine order itself. Zeus' response was instant and terrifying. He overturned the table, the ultimate sign of a broken feast, and with a thunderbolt, he utterly destroyed Lycaon's palace. But for the king himself, the punishment was far more poetic. As the Roman poet Ovid recorded, the king was transformed, his fine robes becoming a coat of coarse fur, his form twisting into that of a ravenous wolf. His own savage nature was now his only reality. The man who served human flesh was condemned to forever crave it, his human cunning fused with a beast's hunger. This transformation was not an arbitrary curse. It was a revelation. The wolf's form was simply the external truth of the internal monster Lycaon had always been. He became, for all of mythology, the archetypal werewolf, a permanent warning of what happens when humanity sheds its own laws. His story forces us to ask a chilling question. When the gods reshape a mortal, are they sometimes just holding up a mirror? But not all transformations are born from divine fury. Some arise from a love so profound it defies death itself, leading to a sacrifice that would turn a queen into a sound. A voice that was once entirely her own became a prison of repetition. The nymph Echo did not begin her life as a mere reflection of sound. She was a talkative companion to Zeus' other lovers, using her own clever speech to distract the goddess Hera with long stories while Zeus pursued his affairs. When Hera discovered the deception, her wrath was precise and cruel. She did not strike Echo dumb, but she stripped her of the power to speak her own mind. From that moment, Echo could only repeat the last few words spoken by others. This was a transformation of identity, a reduction from a person to an echo in both name and nature. Her own thoughts and desires were locked away, forever unheard. This curse intersected with a deeper tragedy when she fell hopelessly in love with the beautiful youth Narcissus. Unable to initiate a conversation, she could only follow him, waiting for him to speak so she might express a fragment of her own longing through his words. When Narcissus finally cried out to his companions, "Is anyone here?" Echo's desperate reply, "Here," was the only declaration she could manage. Rejected and scorned, she wasted away in her grief until only her voice remained, a sound without a body, forever bound to the spaces between rocks and mountains. As the poet Longus understood, such myths capture a profound despair, where a character's very form becomes a prison for their spirit. Echo's transformation was not a single moment but a gradual fading, both physically and spiritually. She was redefined from a vibrant nymph into a permanent symbol of unrequited love and the devastating loss of self. Her forgotten change forces us to ask what truly makes a person. Is it our physical form, or is it the ability to speak our own truth? Echo's legacy is a tragic legend built entirely from what was taken from her, a haunting reminder of the power of our own voice. But what happens when a transformation is not a punishment, but the only path to salvation? A desperate flight through the forest redefines the very meaning of escape. The river nymph Daphne, bound by a sacred vow of chastity to the goddess Artemis, found herself pursued with relentless passion by the god Apollo. His love, ignited by a mischievous arrow from Eros, was her deepest terror. As his footsteps thundered behind her, her own strength began to fail. In that moment of ultimate despair, she cried out to her father, the river god Peneus, not for a weapon, but for a sanctuary. He answered with the only defense powerful enough to thwart a god. Her feet rooted to the earth, her soft skin hardened into bark, and her outstretched arms branched into the air. She became a laurel tree, her physical form completely transformed to protect her spiritual vow. Apollo, arriving too late, could only embrace the new tree, feeling her heart still beating beneath the rough bark. As Ovid captured the moment, a heavy numbness seized her limbs and thin bark closed over her breast. This was not a punishment, but a profound and tragic refuge. Her identity was preserved through a complete loss of her original self. The legacy of this transformation echoes through history. Apollo, in his grief and reverence, adopted the laurel as his sacred tree. He wove its leaves into a wreath, a crown that would forever symbolize victory, poetic achievement, and peace. Daphne, the object of desire, was redefined as Daphne, the source of eternal honor. Her story challenges our idea of a happy ending, presenting instead a resolution that is deeply bittersweet. It asks us a difficult question. Can the ultimate preservation of your will feel like a loss, while simultaneously granting a form of power that outlasts empires. Her arboreal salvation proves that a transformation can be both a refuge and a rebirth, a silencing of one voice to create a symbol that speaks for centuries. This deep connection to the natural world finds a parallel in another tale, where devotion does not lead to a tree but to a flower. The rhythmic clatter of a loom can build a world of its own. In a small Lydian village, the mortal weaver Arachne created tapestries so breathtaking that nymphs would abandon their streams just to watch her work. Her fame grew with every thread until she made a declaration that would echo through the ages. She boasted that her skill was greater than that of the goddess Athena herself, the divine patron of the craft. This was not mere confidence. It was a direct challenge to the established order, a mortal placing her own genius above divine authority. The goddess, disguised as an old woman, came to warn Arachne, offering her a chance to repent and seek forgiveness for her hubris. But Arachne, blinded by pride, refused and even repeated her boast directly to the goddess. The challenge was accepted, and a contest of cosmic proportions began. Athena wove a tapestry depicting the glorious, awe-inspiring power of the gods, showing the 12 Olympians in their majesty and the terrible fates of mortals who dared to defy them. It was a warning woven in thread. Arachne, in response, created a masterpiece of a very different nature. Her loom showed the gods not in their glory, but in their deceit. She illustrated their numerous deceptions and transgressions against mortals, their disguises and their manipulations. The technical skill was flawless, so perfect that even the goddess could find no fault in the workmanship itself. But the subject was an unforgivable insult. Enraged by the mortal's flawless artistry and her impious subject, Athena tore the tapestry to shreds and struck Arachne on the head. Overwhelmed with shame and pain, the weaver tried to hang herself, but the goddess would not grant her that escape. Instead, she pronounced a different fate. She sprinkled Arachne with the juices of a magical herb, and a terrifying transformation began. Arachne's body shriveled and darkened, her head growing small, her fingers merging into her sides to become long, thin legs. She was transformed into a spider, condemned to hang from a thread for all eternity, weaving her intricate webs as she once wove her magnificent tapestries. As Ovid recorded, her skill remained, but her form was forever changed. This is the classic lesson of hubris punished, yet the story redefines Arachne in a deeply ironic way. Her punishment did not erase her talent. It fused her identity with it for all time. The very act of weaving, which was her crime, became her eternal existence. Her transformation spawned an entire species that carries her name, arachnids, each one a tiny, skittering monument to her unparalleled skill. Her story forces us to ask whether a punitive transformation can, in its own strange way, celebrate the very talent it was meant to humble. Arachne's legacy is a paradox, a warning about pride that simultaneously immortalizes the creative spirit that dared to challenge heaven. This divine wrath, born from a contest of skill, stands in stark contrast to a transformation born from the deepest, most personal sorrow. The stone on Mount Sipylus weeps to this day. Queen Niobe of Thebes once stood at the pinnacle of mortal happiness, blessed with 14 beautiful children, 7 sons and 7 daughters. In her pride, she committed an unforgivable act of hubris. She openly mocked the goddess Leto, mother of only 2 children, Apollo and Artemis. She questioned why the people of Thebes would worship a goddess who had borne so few when they had a queen with such a magnificent brood. This public insult to their mother summoned a divine and merciless vengeance. Apollo, with his silver bow, hunted down and slew all 7 of Niobe's sons. Artemis, with her golden arrows, did the same to her 7 daughters. In a single horrific day, Niobe's world of joy was annihilated. She cradled the last of her fallen children, her grief so immense, so bottomless, that her body could no longer contain it. The poet Homer, in his Iliad, tells us that the gods themselves took pity on her in their own way. They transformed her into a stone statue high on the mountain cliffs. Yet even in this petrified state, her sorrow could not be quenched. A spring broke through the rock, and her stone form continues to weep eternally. This was not a punishment in the traditional sense. It was a metamorphosis of emotion into a permanent geographical fact. Her unending sadness became a literal part of the landscape. Niobe is redefined forever. She is no longer the boastful queen, but the ultimate symbol of maternal grief. Her story forces a haunting question upon us. Can sorrow be so absolute that it demands a physical form, that the human body itself must become a monument to its own pain? Her stony legacy is a dual warning, a caution against the pride that invites ruin, and a profound, silent empathy for the loss that follows. This petrifying grief, born from divine wrath, stands in stark contrast to a transformation born from cleverness and a desperate will to survive. A beautiful white heifer stands in a field, a form of pure torment. Io, a mortal princess beloved by Zeus, was the victim of a divine deception. To hide his affair from the ever-watchful Hera, Zeus transformed Io into a cow, a beautiful and flawless heifer. But Hera was not fooled. She demanded the heifer as a gift, a cruel and brilliant move that forced Zeus to hand over his lover. Hera then set the 100-eyed giant Argus Panops as a permanent, unsleeping guard. Trapped within the body of a beast, unable to speak or plead her case, Io endured a profound loss of self. As the ancient playwright Aeschylus captured in his tragedy Prometheus Bound, she was a wanderer stung by a gadfly, a ghost in her own life. Her transformation was not a punishment for any crime of her own, but a consequence of being a pawn in a celestial conflict. Her heroism lies not in glorious deeds, but in the sheer, grinding act of survival. Even after the messenger god Hermes slew Argus, Hera's wrath did not end. She sent a relentless gadfly to sting Io, driving her mad and forcing her on a frantic, years-long journey across the known world, from the Ionian Sea that bears her name to the very edges of Egypt. Her path was one of pure suffering, a testament to resilience when all agency is stripped away. She was eventually restored to human form in Egypt, where she gave birth to a line of kings, but the memory of her bovine prison and the sting of the gadfly surely remained. Io's forgotten transformation redefines a hero as one who endures the unendurable, who survives when their very identity is rewritten by powers beyond their control. Her story forces us to ask how one holds onto hope when their own body has become a cage. This passive endurance under heavenly persecution stands in stark contrast to a transformation born from a very different, far more active kind of love, a love that would literally move the earth. A prison of bronze cannot contain a prophecy. King Acrisius, terrified by an oracle's prediction that his daughter's son would one day kill him, sought to outwit fate itself. He locked the young Danaë away in a subterranean chamber with walls of bronze, a tomb for her future, believing that no man could possibly reach her. But he failed to account for a god's determination. Zeus, undeterred by mortal architecture, did not shatter the walls or storm the gates. Instead, he transformed his own divine essence, descending into her chamber as a shower of liquid gold. This was a metamorphosis of intimacy, a physical form so abstract and beautiful it defied the very concept of her prison. Through this golden rain, he conceived the great hero Perseus. Danaë's story is utterly redefined by this moment. She is not the one who changes shape, yet she is the center of a transformation that bends the rules of reality. Her imprisonment becomes the stage for a liberation of destiny, not of her body. The golden shower symbolizes something profound, that fate and divine will are as pervasive and unstoppable as light itself. They cannot be barred by any wall, no matter how strong. This challenges everything we have seen so far. Transformation is not always a punitive curse inflicted upon a mortal. Here it is a God's creative tool, a deliberate act of connection that fulfills a grander design. How can a change in form be an act of love that unlocks a grander destiny? For Danaë, the divine visitation was both her confinement and her release, a paradox where her prison became the cradle of a legend. This golden conception, an act of creation, paves the way for a transformation that is a direct and bloody result of heroic action. A victory won by divine trickery carries its own peril. The huntress Atalanta, bound by an oath to marry only the man who could outrun her, saw many suitors fail and pay with their lives. Then came Hippomenes, who knew he could not win by speed alone. He prayed to Aphrodite, and the goddess of love provided him with 3 irresistible golden apples. During the race, each time Atalanta began to pull ahead, Hippomenes rolled one of the gleaming fruits off the course. Drawn by their beauty, she would swerve to retrieve them, losing precious moments until, with the 3rd apple, he crossed the finish line first. Their marriage was a celebration of cleverness and desire, a seeming triumph of love over impossible odds. But their joy was short-lived. In a moment of passionate forgetfulness, the couple lay together within a sacred temple dedicated to the mother goddess Cybele, defiling a holy space. The goddess' wrath was immediate and severe. As the mythographer Hyginus records, she transformed them both into lions, yoking them to her chariot. This was not merely a punishment of form, but of function. Ancient Greeks believed that lions could not mate with their own kind, only with leopards. Their transformation was a poetic curse, forever separating them in the very act that had been their transgression. The clever suitor and the swift-footed virgin were redefined as powerful, majestic beasts, yet eternally denied the intimacy they had celebrated. Their story asks a difficult question. Can a single moment of disrespect unravel an entire legacy of achievement? Atalanta and Hippomenes remind us that a happy beginning is no shield against divine law, and that a transformation can serve as a permanent correction, a reminder etched in flesh and fur that no victory, however clever, places you above the sacred. This harsh justice, however, stands in stark contrast to a metamorphosis born not from wrath, but from the deepest well of compassion. A swan of impossible beauty glided onto the riverbank where Leda rested. This was no ordinary bird, but Zeus himself, his divine power cloaked in feathers of startling white. The encounter that followed, immortalized by poets like Yeats, is one of mythology's most hauntingly ambiguous moments. Was it a seduction, a divine pursuit, or something else entirely? The swan, a universal symbol of grace and purity, became the perfect vessel for a profound deception. Through this beautiful disguise, the king of the gods achieved his ends, and from that union came children who would bend the arc of history itself. Leda gave birth to 2 sets of twins. From one egg came Helen, whose face would launch 1,000 ships and ignite the Trojan War. From the other came the Dioscuri, the twin heroes Castor and Pollux. In a single, strange moment, Leda was redefined. She was no longer just a queen of Sparta. Her very body became the unwilling site of a cosmic event, a nexus where divine whim intersected with human destiny. This transformation forces a difficult question about the stories we tell. Where is the line between a divine romance and a violation of mortal will when the seducer wears a mask of innocence? The swan's form blurs that line completely. making the encounter feel both enchanting and deeply unsettling. Leda's own voice is almost entirely absent from the old tales, her agency submerged beneath the weight of the world-changing consequences that sprang from her. The beauty of the swan was the trap, its graceful form a deception that set in motion one of humanity's greatest epics. How does a single, deceptive moment, wrapped in feathers and myth, ripple out to shape the fate of nations? It proves that the gods' most powerful transformations are not always brutish displays of force, but can be subtle, beautiful, and utterly devastating. This use of a natural form for a cosmic agenda stands in stark contrast to a transformation that was not a deception, but a direct and merciful gift from the divine. The peaceful sounds of the forest stream masked a presence that should never have been there. The hunter Actaeon, separated from his companions, pushed through a thicket and into a secluded grove, a place of such profound sanctity that the very air seemed to hum with power. There he saw the goddess Artemis completely unclothed and bathing with her nymphs. It was a vision of divine purity, and it was a sight that guaranteed his doom. His transgression was a complete accident, a twist of cruel fate, yet the punishment was absolute. The goddess, enraged by his mortal eyes upon her sacred form, did not strike him dead. She transformed him, splashing water into his face and uttering a curse that rewrote his very being. His own body became his executioner. His skin tightened into a deer's hide, his neck elongated, and antlers sprouted from his brow. He was now a magnificent stag, a creature of the very forest he had once hunted. In that instant, the hero was redefined not by his strength or skill, but by his tragic misfortune. He tried to cry out a warning, but only a stag's bleat escaped his throat. His own loyal hounds, catching the scent of prey, turned on him. The hunter who had commanded them became the quarry, torn apart by the very instruments of his own domain. As Ovid so chillingly described, his own dogs surrounded their master, unaware of who he was, and buried their fierce jaws in his body. This story forces a difficult question about justice and chance. Can a person's entire life be erased by a single, unlucky step in the wrong direction? Actaeon's transformation was a perfect and terrible irony, a divine lesson about the sanctity of boundaries and the unforgiving nature of power. His legacy is a warning that some truths once seen cannot be unseen, and that the price for such knowledge can be the complete annihilation of the self. This brutal end, born from an innocent mistake, makes the next transformation all the more startling, for it emerges not from wrath, but from the deepest well of compassion and sacrifice. A simple fisherman's discovery began with a patch of grass on a riverbank. Glaucus had laid his catch upon a particular herb, and to his astonishment, the dead fish twitched back to life, leaping from the shore back into the water. This was no ordinary plant, but a divine catalyst, driven by a profound curiosity and a deep-seated compassion for the life he harvested. Glaucus made a fateful choice. He consumed the magical herb himself. The transformation was immediate and overwhelming. The world of air and solid ground began to recede as a new consciousness flooded into him. He felt an irresistible pull toward the sea, diving into the waves as his legs fused into a powerful, coiling fish's tail, his skin taking on the hues of the deep, and his beard becoming a flowing mass of blue-green seaweed. This was not a curse inflicted upon him, but an apotheosis, a glorious elevation to divinity. He was reborn as a prophetic sea god, a patron to fishermen and a wise, if often lovesick, figure in later tales. His forgotten transformation stands apart from so many others. Where others were reshaped by punishment or tragic love, Glaucus was reshaped by his own reverence for the natural world. His compassion for the creatures of the sea literally dissolved the boundary between himself and his domain, elevating his essence to a higher state. His story challenges the very notion that profound change must be born from suffering. What does it mean for a hero's journey to culminate not in a tomb, but in a peaceful, eternal existence as part of the world he cherished? Glaucus embodies the idea that a transformation can be a reward, a harmonious merging with the source of one's own empathy. This gentle, oceanic elevation finds its counterpoint in a transformation born from a far more frantic and desperate source, a mother's love pushed to its absolute limit. Gold itself became a prison for King Midas. His story begins not with greed, but with an act of unexpected kindness when he extended his hospitality to the lost satyr Silenus. In gratitude, the god Dionysus offered the king any wish his heart desired. Midas, blinded by the allure of wealth, wished for a golden touch, a transformation not of his body but of his very interaction with the world. At first, it was a dream come true. He touched a wooden table and it gleamed as solid gold. He plucked a stone from his garden and it became a priceless nugget in his hand. But the dream curdled into a nightmare with terrifying speed. He reached for a piece of bread to sate his hunger, and it hardened into a metallic, inedible lump. He went to embrace his beloved daughter, and in a moment of ultimate horror, she was transformed before his eyes into a golden statue, a monument to his own fatal error. This was not a punishment inflicted by a wrathful god, but a curse born from his own misguided desire. As Ovid captured so perfectly, the very power he had craved now isolated him in a world of sterile, lifeless treasure. His transformation was profoundly internal. His value system had been literally gilded, revealing the hollow, chilling reality of wealth without sustenance, without warmth, without love. He was a king who could own the world but could not eat a grape or hold his child. His desperate prayers were finally answered, and Dionysus instructed him to wash away his curse in the river Pactolus. The waters cleansed him, and legend says the river sands themselves were left sprinkled with gold dust, a permanent geographical reminder of his folly. This redemptive element adds a profound layer to the tale. How does a power that grants ultimate wealth ultimately lead to the most profound spiritual poverty? Midas was redefined from a generous host into the archetypal cautionary figure, a man who learned too late that some transformations, even those born from a wish, can strip life of its very essence. This cursed blessing, a direct result of a mortal's own choice, stands in stark contrast to a transformation that was an act of pure, divine protection. The gift of eternal life can be a prison without the key of youth. For the Trojan prince Tithonus, beloved by Eos, the rosy-fingered goddess of the dawn, this was the devastating truth. She pleaded with Zeus to grant her mortal lover immortality, and the king of the gods agreed. But in her passionate request, she made a catastrophic oversight. She forgot to ask for eternal youth. Tithonus received the endless years, but not the vitality to fill them. He could not die, but he could not stop aging. His body grew ever more frail, his limbs withered, and his voice became a thin, rasping whisper. The goddess who had once cherished his beauty was now his eternal caretaker, trapped by her own love, watching the man she adored slowly crumble into a state of perpetual decay. This was not a punishment for a crime, but a flaw in the very nature of the wish itself, a half-finished blessing that became a perfect curse. As the Homeric hymn to Aphrodite recounts, Eos could no longer bear the agonizing sight. In an act of desperate pity, she performed a final transformation. She changed him into a cicada, a delicate insect whose constant, whirring song fills the summer air. His shrunken, desiccated form found a new home in the insect's fragile shell. His voice, which had faded to a whisper, was now an incessant, rhythmic chirp. Tithonus was redefined forever. he is not remembered as a handsome prince, but as a tragic lesson in the importance of precise desires. His story forces a chilling question upon us. What good is an endless future if you are not present within it? The cicada's song is a poignant metaphor for a spirit that outlasts its body, a consciousness trapped in a cycle of pure, mindless sound. This transformation was, in its own strange way, an act of mercy. It granted him a release from his suffering body while preserving the one thing that remained, the echo of his existence. His legacy is a haunting exploration of the difference between immortality and a life truly lived, a reminder that the greatest gifts from the gods demand the greatest foresight. This grotesque burden, born from a flawed wish, finds its dark mirror in a transformation of pure, monstrous vengeance. A beautiful face can become a monument to injustice. Medusa was not born a monster. She began as a priestess of Athena, a woman renowned for her beauty and her devotion, sworn to a life of chastity within the goddess's sacred temple. Her life was shattered when the god Poseidon assaulted her within those holy walls, a profound desecration of Athena's domain. Yet, when the goddess discovered this violation, her wrath fell not upon the god, but upon the mortal victim. Medusa's punishment was a transformation of horrific irony. Her most celebrated feature, her beautiful hair, writhed and hissed into a nest of venomous snakes. Her face, once a source of admiration, became a weapon of instant death, her gaze turning any living thing to cold, unfeeling stone. This was a brutal inversion, turning her beauty into a shield that isolated her completely, redefining her from a pious maiden into one of mythology's most feared monsters. This punitive change created a permanent symbol of the dangerous, punishing aspect of the divine feminine. For centuries, her story was told as a simple warning against sacrilege. But later interpretations, particularly modern feminist readings, have reclaimed her narrative. They see in her snarling visage not just a curse, but a powerful symbol of female rage in the face of victimization. Her petrifying gaze becomes a potent metaphor for trauma itself, for how a violent experience can freeze a person's spirit and how society often demonizes the victim, making them the monster. How does a transformation designed to punish and isolate ultimately forge an icon of fearsome empowerment? Medusa's legacy forces us to confront a difficult truth, that the same power that makes one a monster can also make one untouchable, protected by the very terror one inspires. Her story is a tragic alchemy where victimhood is violently reforged into a kind of terrible, lonely sovereignty. This monstrous vengeance, born from divine injustice, stands in stark contrast to a transformation that was not a punishment at all, but an act of desperate, selfless escape. High above the island of Crete, two figures defied the very laws of the earth. Imprisoned within his own brilliant creation, the labyrinth, the master craftsman Daedalus faced a prison with no exit but the sky. His transformation was not one of flesh but of pure intellect. He studied the flight of birds, gathering fallen feathers and arranging them by size, binding them with thread and sealing them with wax. He was not becoming a bird, he was building the power of flight itself, a temporary but glorious new form of mobility forged from sheer human ingenuity. This was a heroism of the mind, a direct challenge to the tyranny of King Minos. As Ovid wrote, Daedalus turned his mind to arts unknown, crafting those infamous wings. He fitted the smaller wings to his son Icarus, warning him of the delicate balance required for their freedom. He must fly a middle course, avoiding the dampness of the sea and the scorching heat of the sun. The initial flight was a triumph, a breathtaking ascent from the stone labyrinth into the boundless blue. The prison walls shrank below them, and for a glorious moment they were free, redefined not as prisoners but as pioneers of the air. But then came the tragic turn. Icarus, intoxicated by the thrill of flight and the warmth of the sun, forgot his father's warning. He soared higher and higher until the sun's relentless heat softened the wax that held his wings together. The feathers began to loosen and fall, and the boy who had touched the heavens plummeted into the sea that now bears his name. Daedalus, the successful survivor, watched his creation become the instrument of his greatest loss. His story redefines a hero in a profoundly tragic way. It asks if a person can be celebrated for a transformative invention that also leads to their ultimate personal devastation. Daedalus is the hero of intellect and creation, a figure who used his genius to overcome an impossible obstacle, yet his legacy is forever shadowed by the price of that ambition. The waxen wings are a perfect symbol of this duality. They represent humanity's soaring potential to transcend its limits, while also reminding us that such man-made transformations are inherently fragile. They demand respect for natural laws, a careful balance between ambition and humility. Can a hero be defined by a creation that escapes their control, a brilliance that illuminates both the path to freedom and the depth of a father's grief? This aerial ambition shows that the most profound transformations are not always those that change the body, but those that change our relationship with the world itself, even when the cost is unimaginable. His own halls did not recognize their king. After 20 years of war and wandering, Odysseus finally stood on the soil of Ithaca, but the hero who had blinded a cyclops and outwitted a witch was gone. In his place stood a frail, wrinkled beggar, his back bent and his clothes in tatters. This was the work of the goddess Athena, a strategic transformation of pure intellect. She did not grant him strength, but something far more powerful, the cloak of total anonymity. His heroism was redefined in that moment, shifting from epic deeds to profound patience. He had to endure insults from the very men who sought to steal his throne and his wife, swallowing his royal pride for the sake of a greater victory. This disguise was a brilliant test, a lens that revealed the true hearts of everyone in his palace. His loyal swineherd Eumaeus showed kindness to the unknown stranger, while the arrogant suitors revealed their cruelty, throwing stools at the man they believed to be powerless. Even his faithful wife, Penelope, remained a mystery to be carefully unraveled. His own identity became his most carefully guarded secret, a weapon he would only reveal at the perfect moment. What does it mean for a king to willingly become a beggar? For Odysseus, it meant that true power lies not in the appearance of strength, but in the strategic suppression of it. His transformation was a masterclass in cunning, proving that the greatest heroes are those who understand that sometimes to reclaim everything, you must first become nothing. This conscious act of self-effacement, a tool for intelligence, sets the stage for a transformation that is not a choice, but a divine reward for unwavering faith. The forest floor felt alien beneath her paws. Callisto, once a graceful nymph who ran with Artemis' sacred hunt, now moved through the same woods as an outcast, a bear. Her story is a cascade of unjust transformations, beginning when Zeus, the king of the gods, saw her. His attention, as it so often did, invited catastrophe. To hide his transgression from his wife Hera, or perhaps to protect the nymph, he disguised her. But Hera's jealousy was a force of nature itself. She found Callisto and, in a fit of rage, twisted the disguise into a permanent curse. The nymph's slender form swelled with coarse fur, her gentle hands became crushing paws, and her voice was lost to a bestial growl. In an instant, the companion of the virgin goddess was exiled from human company forever, her own identity locked away inside a beast's body. This was more than a punishment, it was an erasure. For years she wandered, a mother separated from the son she had borne, Arcas, living in constant fear of the very hunters she once called companions. The cruelest twist of fate arrived when that son, now a skilled young hunter, came across the great bear in the woods. He raised his spear, poised to kill the creature who was, in truth, his own mother. In that heart-stopping moment, Zeus finally intervened. He swept down and, in an act of desperate preservation, placed them both safely in the night sky. Callisto became the great bear, Ursa Major, and her son Arcas became the little bear, Ursa Minor, forever circling the celestial pole. This final transformation redefines her entire tragic narrative. The bear form, a symbol of her brutal isolation and loss of self, is not undone. Instead, it is immortalized. Her earthly suffering is rewritten as a cosmic constant, a mother and son united for eternity in a way they never could be on Earth. It is a bittersweet resolution, a legacy of violation transformed into a symbol of eternal, watchful care. Her story forces us to ask if a hero's painful journey can truly be redeemed by a final, glorious change. Callisto's celestial exile suggests that sometimes redemption is not about returning to what was lost, but about finding a permanent, if distant, peace. This cosmic preservation stands in stark contrast to a transformation that is not about exile, but about a deep, fundamental connection to the cycles of the earth itself. The waters of a Sicilian spring hold a memory of pure despair. The nymph Cyane was a guardian of her own tranquil realm, and she witnessed the unthinkable. The earth itself tore open, and from the chasm emerged the dark lord Hades, gripping the terrified Persephone, dragging the daughter of the harvest into his shadowy chariot. Cyane did not stand by in fear. She rose to block his path, her voice ringing out against this violent theft, demanding that he not provoke the wrath of a mother by such a brutal act. But her power was nothing against the king of the dead. With a contemptuous strike from his royal scepter, Hades created a path through her very waters and plunged into the abyss with his prize. Cyane was left not with physical wounds, but with a sorrow so profound it began to consume her from within. She wept uncontrollably, and as she wept, her physical form could no longer hold its shape. Her limbs softened, her body dissolved, and she melted away into the very pool she had once commanded, becoming a fountain of endless tears. This was not a transformation inflicted by a god's direct curse. It was a metamorphosis born from overwhelming empathy and the helplessness of witnessing a great crime. As Ovid wrote, you could see her limbs soften, her bones begin to bend. Her form literally liquefied from grief. Cyane was redefined in that moment. She ceased to be merely a local nymph and became a permanent, geographical testament to that act of abduction. Her waters became a silent witness, and it was in her pool that Persephone's girdle was later found, a crucial piece of evidence that confirmed the terrible truth to her grieving mother, Demeter. This is a heroism of a different kind, a transformation of passive resistance. How can a person bear witness to injustice when all their power is gone? Cyane's answer was to become the memory of the event itself, a liquid monument to sorrow that would outlast stone. Her dissolving protest proves that some transformations are not about gaining power, but about embodying a truth so painful it demands a physical form. This silent, empathetic dissolution stands in stark contrast to a transformation that is a direct and brutal punishment for a very different kind of transgression, one born not of empathy, but of blasphemous curiosity. Their humble cottage held a feast of true devotion. In the entire village of Phrygia, only one door opened for the two weary travelers, the old couple Philemon and Baucis, living in poverty but rich in spirit, welcomed the strangers into their meager home. They did not know these were Zeus and Hermes in disguise, testing the hospitality of mortals. While their wealthy neighbors turned the gods away, filemen and bosses offered everything they had: a simple meal, a stool to rest on, and the warmth of a shared fire. Their reward was a revelation. As the gods revealed their true nature, the entire valley was flooded, punishing the inhospitable, while the couple's cottage began to shimmer and transform. The thatched roof soared into a golden ceiling, the wooden walls became marble columns. Their simple home was now a magnificent temple, a divine sanctuary born from a single act of kindness. But the greatest gift was yet to come. The gods offered them any wish, and their request was not for wealth or long life, but for a shared destiny. They asked to serve as priests in this new temple, and when their time came, to die at the very same moment, so that neither would have to endure the agony of burying the other. This was a heroism of the heart, a quiet courage found in unwavering loyalty rather than epic battles. As Ovid recorded, their wish was granted. After many years of peaceful service, they felt their lives beginning to ebb simultaneously. Standing before their temple, they saw each other's forms beginning to change, bark creeping over their skin. Where two people had stood, a single, magnificent tree now grew, an oak and a linden intertwined from one trunk, their branches forever entangled. This united eternity redefines the very idea of a heroic end. Their transformation was not an escape from sorrow, but the ultimate fulfillment of their love, a perfect harmony of two souls becoming a permanent part of the natural world. What does it mean for a person's final chapter to be written not in stone or song, but in living, breathing wood? Their story stands as a rare beacon of hope in mythology, a testament that the most powerful magic can be found in simple piety and selfless love, rewarded with a peace that literally took root and flourished. This gentle, arboreal reward for devotion finds a fascinating parallel in a transformation born from a different kind of gift, a musical talent so divine it could charm the stones themselves. Their voices rose in a defiant chorus, challenging the very sources of inspiration. The 9 daughters of King Pyrrhus, known as the Pierides, possessed talent, but it was eclipsed by an immense and foolish pride. They stood before the Muses, the 9 divine patrons of the arts, and declared a contest of song. This was not a respectful homage, but an act of pure hubris, a mortal attempt to usurp the divine right to creativity itself. The Muses accepted, and the competition began on the slopes of Mount Helicon. The Pierides sang, their melody skillful but hollow, a performance tainted by arrogance. Then the Muses answered, and their song was not merely beautiful, it was the essence of beauty itself, weaving the history of the cosmos and the glory of the gods into a harmony that shook the very mountain. The victory was absolute and undeniable. The punishment for such audacity was swift and symbolic. As Ovid recorded, the Pierides were transformed into magpies, their human forms shrinking, their fine robes replaced by stark black and white feathers. This was a perfect poetic justice. The magpie is a bird known for its incessant, chattering call, a creature that mimics and borrows sounds but cannot create true music of its own. They were forever condemned to a chattering echo of the sublime art they had arrogantly tried to claim. Their transformation redefines them completely. They are no longer remembered for their skill, but for their failure, their very species a permanent brand of vain ambition. This myth reinforces a powerful, if severe, ancient belief that artistic and intellectual genius is a divine gift, not a mortal possession to be flaunted. To challenge the gods in their own sacred domain is the height of folly. The Pierides, as anti-heroes, find their entire legacy cemented by the form they take after a humiliating defeat. Their story forces us to ask whether a person can be so defined by their failure that their very essence becomes a warning to others. This avian punishment for artistic pride sets the stage for a final, profound metamorphosis, one that emerges not from a challenge to the gods, but from a hero's desperate, personal quest for his own identity. The cool, still water of the pool offered a perfect deception. Narcissus, a youth of breathtaking beauty, knelt to drink and found himself captivated by the face gazing back from the depths. He did not recognize his own reflection. He saw only a flawless, unapproachable being, and in that moment, a profound and tragic love was born. He could not tear himself away, trapped in a silent dialogue with an image that offered nothing but its own perfect silence. He reached out to touch the beautiful boy, and the water rippled, breaking the vision into 1,000 shimmering pieces. As the surface stilled, the obsession returned, deeper and more desperate than before. This was not vanity in the simple sense. It was a catastrophic failure of self-recognition, a love that was both intensely personal and completely hollow. He remained by the pool, refusing food and drink, slowly wasting away as he pined for a love that was forever just beyond his fingertips. His own identity had been eclipsed by a reflection, and the man who could love no one else was destroyed by his inability to love anything but an illusion. As the Roman poet Ovid so perfectly captured, he was consumed by the flame of a love that had no substance. His transformation was the final, poetic act of this self-annihilation. Where the beautiful youth had lain, a new flower now grew, its white petals cradling a golden center, forever bowing its head as if to gaze at its own image in the water below. He became the Narcissus, a living monument to his own fatal flaw. This transformation redefines him from a person into a permanent psychological archetype. His name is now the very word for self-obsession. His floral fate is a poignant symbol of that eternal, unbreakable connection to the source of his destruction. How does a transformation born from self-love ultimately represent the most complete loss of self? Narcissus shows us that the most isolating prison is the one built from a distorted reflection, where the love of an image leads to the erasure of the soul. His story is the ultimate warning that to know only yourself is, in the end, to become nothing at all. A pillar of salt stands as a final, silent testament to a single, forbidden look. The air crackled with divine fury as Lot and his family fled, the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah burning behind them under a storm of fire and brimstone. Their one command was absolute, a directive for their very survival. Do not look back, do not linger, even in spirit, on the life you are leaving behind. But as the thunder of destruction reached a crescendo, Lot's wife faltered, her heart tethered by a profound and complicated nostalgia for her home. Her memories, her entire world, could not obey. A moment of overwhelming weakness, a desperate backward glance, and her fate was sealed. Instantly, her body underwent a terrifying metamorphosis, her flesh crystallizing, her form solidifying into a stark, white pillar of salt. This biblical transformation redefines her completely. She is no longer just a nameless companion in her husband's story. She becomes an eternal monument, a geological warning carved from the very substance of tears and preservation. Her saline form is a poignant symbol of the human struggle to fully sever ties with a past, even a sinful one. It speaks to the powerful grip of memory and the danger of being emotionally anchored to a place of destruction. Her legacy is one of profound tragedy, a figure forever frozen in the act of remembrance, eternally gazing upon the ruins of what was lost. This story forces a difficult question upon us, one that resonates deeply with our own lives. What does it mean for a person's entire journey, their potential for a new beginning, to be halted and immortalized by a single moment of hesitation? Her transformation is not about gaining power or escaping danger, but about becoming the consequence itself. She is the human spirit fossilized. The pillar of salt is a memorial that every traveler who passed would see, a stark reminder that the past can crystallize us if we are not careful, turning living potential into a static, cautionary tale. This salted memorial, a person transformed into a mineral lesson, brings our exploration of 23 forgotten transformations to a powerful and sobering close. These 23 forgotten changes reveal a hidden grammar of myth itself. Every transformation, from the weeping stone of Niobe to the golden touch of Midas, follows a deeper, symbolic logic. They are not random acts of divine whimsy, but concentrated expressions of universal human themes. Justice is served when a person's inner nature is made manifest, as with the wolfish Lycaon. Love and desire spark metamorphoses as both punishment and refuge, seen in Daphne's arboreal escape. The corrosive nature of hubris is carved into the very flesh of Arachne and the Pierides, their talons twisted into their cages. And overwhelming grief becomes a geographical fact, with Cyane dissolving into her own tears and Niobe's sorrow literally turning to stone. These stories were the ancient world's way of making sense of a chaotic universe, giving tangible form to the forces of nature and the complexities of the human heart. What is a sudden storm if not the wrath of a god made visible? What is the unending song of the cicada if not the echo of a wish gone terribly wrong? At their core, these myths force a fundamental question about the self. When Tiresias lived as a woman or when Odysseus wore the face of a beggar, what essential part of them remained unaltered? The transformations suggest that identity is both fragile and resilient, that our outer form can be rewritten by gods or fate, but some core spark of experience, of memory, of spirit endures the change. This is the true redefinition of the legendary hero. Their journey is not a straight path to glory, but a series of profound becoming, where the cost of their legend is often a complete and irreversible alteration of their very being. By deciphering these thematic patterns, we learn to read mythology not as a collection of fanciful tales, but as a profound and ongoing conversation about what it means to be human in a world where the boundaries between mortal and divine, between the self and the natural world, are constantly being crossed and redrawn. This symbolic language allows the old stories to speak directly to our own modern struggles with identity, consequence, and the search for meaning. Our journey ends where every great myth begins, with a question about the nature of the self. These 23 forgotten transformations are far more than ancient special effects. They are the crucible where the true essence of a hero is forged, a process far more revealing than any single glorious deed. Tiresias gained his legendary wisdom not in battle, but through the lived experience of another gender. Lot's wife became a universal cautionary tale not through action, but through a single, fatal glance of remembrance. Each metamorphosis, whether a punishment like Arachne's or a refuge like Daphne's, added a profound layer of depth, tragedy, or unexpected meaning to these figures, redefining them far beyond their primary myths. They teach us a powerful, ancient truth that identity is not a fixed stone, but a fluid river, constantly shaped by the forces of experience, consequence, and divine will. The line between a curse and a blessing is often impossibly thin, a coin that spins in the air, showing both faces at once. The gods themselves were not simple arbiters of good and evil, but complex beings whose interventions reflected the entire spectrum of human emotion, from jealous rage to compassionate pity. So the next time you encounter a hero of myth, look past the slaying of monsters and the winning of treasures. Look instead to the moments they were reshaped, to the wolf's fur or the stone tears or the whispering voice. For it is in these profound changes, these rewritings of the very soul, that their most human and most legendary qualities truly reside. Let these forgotten tales inspire you to listen for the echoes of transformation in all the stories you love, to find the hidden metamorphoses that give every great narrative its enduring power. Thank you for exploring these redefined legends with me. If these forgotten transformations have reshaped your view of mythology, consider the countless other secrets these ancient stories still guard. The tales we explored are just the beginning of a much larger conversation. You can dive even deeper by returning to the original sources that preserved them. Ovid's Metamorphoses is the cornerstone of transformation myths, a poetic tapestry where every story is a thread in this grand theme. For a more analytical guide, Robert Graves's The Greek Myths offers fascinating interpretations and connects these changes to broader cultural patterns. But the exploration does not have to end with the books. We want to hear from you. Share your own favorite mythological transformation in the comments below. Was there a profound change we missed that you find particularly powerful or haunting? Your insights help build a living library of these legends, and if you want to continue this journey into the heart of ancient tales, make sure to subscribe and tap the notification bell. That way, you will never miss our next exploration into the forgotten corners of myth and legend. So tell us, what forgotten story should we uncover together?